Welcome to the hatch disassembly of the E53 X5. Pretty standard removal process. We're going to, even though we're only accessing the certain parts right now, we're just going to go ahead and take the whole hatch apart. For your own knowledge, you probably know how to remove these by now. It's pretty straightforward. You just you fold them out of the way. If you've never had a flat tire, you may not have removed your floor. So just pop this out like so, slides out, and greeted by your spare tire here. For the time being, we're not going to remove this. We're going to go ahead and first thing we're going to do is remove the factory subwoofer over here on this side. And to do that, it's pretty straightforward. So we're going to start with that. Then we'll move over to the other side of the car where we will remove the floor and do any of the wiring that we need to do. So let's start by, first things first, let's go ahead and remove the floor panel out of the trunk. And it's just held together by two 10mm plastic nuts. It just slides right out of here. Very easy to get out. There are just two of them back here. And then the floor piece just lifts right out. You see, it's a pretty straightforward process, and that reveals the factory subwoofer plug, which we're going to actually be doing our wiring with, and then the factory subwoofer bolts, which are down here on the bottom, which we also will need to remove. But before we do, we need to get the this little fuse box out here. It's held in by 5 7mm bolts. So remove that. I'm just going to use a nut driver on some of them. Really, the important thing that you see here is that it's okay to kind of move this around. You're not going to harm anything. It was designed to be moved by BMW. A lot of people are hesitant to move this because they think that it, and rightly so, seems like it would be a fragile piece, but their cars are, as you've experienced, very well built. The hard part sometimes is convincing yourself to take it apart. So we've got 5 of them out of there. The last one's always kind of tricky. I always end up using a ratchet for the last one. It's kind of at a funky angle. So you can see you'll invariably drop something down in there, no big deal. So once you've got the fuse box free, you can see there's all kinds of room. We can pull it up out of the way, and that's going to reveal the rearmost mount of the subwoofer enclosure, which is actually an Allen. It's a, I think it's a, we'll have to go grab it, it's a 7mm Allen bolt, and it's secured on the bottom by 10mm nuts down here, 1 and 2. So we'll go ahead and remove those right now. So we've got the bottom 2 released, and we've got one more on the top. And we've got a slew of Allens, and it's actually a 6mm Allen. So just turn it like so. So with everything loose, we can now, you can see the enclosure is free to move around in there. So we will want to go ahead and unplug the enclosure by just pinching the little tabs here. This just it just slides off, I say, as it's proving to be rather bare. So it's just really tight in there so it doesn't come loose. And now we can take the factory subwoofer enclosure and just lift it up out of the car and out of the way. And keeping in mind, this is where our new enclosure is going to live as well. Sure, if you can see how the lighting back here or not. as you can see, there is a foam lining back here, which adds to some of the sound deadening of the car. In certain vehicles, there's really no rhyme or reason to it. We do end up having to remove this piece of insulation, and in others we don't. So what I recommend, which we'll go over in just a moment, is before you make all your connections and everything, just taking a quick test fit of the x108 prior to removing this. And if it sits right down in there and the bolt lines right up, then we're golden. We're good to go. We don't need to change anything. If it's a little tight, then we'll go ahead and remove this, and we'll of course go over that here in just a moment. So this is essentially what you're going to do to prep the car for the x108 install. And we will, as we said, we're going to be making a couple of connections, wiring connections down here on this plug. We've got a little connector here that we're just going to tap in for the signal to go to the amplifier to tell the music where to go, and from the amplifier back to the subwoofer. At that point, we'll stop now and test fit the x108. So now that we've got the hatch disassembled, we're going to go ahead and prep the enclosure. Here's the little enclosure. So we sent you a 12-foot piece of speaker wire. So what we're going to do is just kind of strip back the insulation here just a little bit. And it's just easier to pre-wire the enclosure before you drop it in there, because once you get it in there, it's just a little bit trickier to get the wiring in there. You can see you've got a blue wire and kind of a silver blue wire, and the one set of wire is copper and one set's silver. Just out of habit, I would make the copper positive and the silver negative. You can do whatever you'd like. That's the way I recommend doing it, so just to keep it straight. So we've got that there. We've got the length of speaker wire here. So just go ahead and kind of get it in your hand and out of the way. Now, just slide on over. Just take the speaker wire, make sure it's not going to get hung up. Just take the fuse box out of the way and take the enclosure in one hand. It's just going to drop right down in there. And it's going to just fall right into place. You see it lines right back up with the factory bolt. You can see it lines right back up with the factory bolt. Just put the factory bolt right back in. Snug everything up. Take the fuse box, just kind of kink it back around. This particular car, we did not have to remove the insulation. It's really only been a couple of them really that we've had to do that in. It just seems like every now and then we encounter one that needs to have it removed. So for the most part, you should not have to worry with that. So once you've got the enclosure secured up there on the top, it's going to kind of pressure fit here on the bottom, and but we'll do the wiring here in a moment. But once you've got that part actually installed, you can see how the enclosure has a bulge out here. The enclosure, or the plastic rather, actually forms part of the structure for the way it goes back in here. It bolts back in, and now that holds the bottom of the enclosure secure. So that's actually what you're going to see if you were to fold your little door down, which I put back over here. This we're going to route back over to this side of the car, where the amplifier is going to live under here. So for the time being, I just wanted to kind of go a quick install of the enclosure. It's in. Go ahead and tighten down your 7mm. Actually, let me take that back. Prior to really tightening everything down, I really like you guys to, once you've preliminarily completed the install, do a test run. Just make sure we've got sound, make sure that the woofer's doing everything it should be. That way you don't have to spend hours taking everything back apart. So you can give it a dry run, make sure everything's playing as it should be. Then, the very last thing, put this guy back in, make sure everything's snugged up, these two 10mm, the rest of the trunk, whatever we've disassembled at that point. The very last thing we want to do is put it together. So we've got the enclosure in. Let's move over to the amplifier and knock that out.